Hey friends, I'm Otis Gibbs, and this is my buddy Dave Jacques. He's going to talk about doing a recording session with Townes Van Zandt.
I actually played, I think, on the last track that Townes recorded. This is actually a pretty good story. So it's April of 95. I know when it was because of what else was going on. I'd gotten the Prime gig. I got the gig with John. And so we had our first rehearsal. There's this guy who used to live in town, Dub Cornett, which I don't know if you know about Dub. He's out in California now, involved in, I don't know. He was like Cowboy. He was a protege of Cowboy, kind of Cowboy Jack Clement, helped Dub out along the way. But, Cowboy was always about, we're in the fun business. If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. But so Dub was definitely that. Like Dub, I remember, like nobody knew what Dub did. Like, what does Dub do anyway? But anyway, so like one of those guys. I knew the girl who worked in for a while, his friend of mine was like his secretary, basically, I said, well, what does Dub do? And she goes, he takes phone calls and goes out to lunch. And sometimes he comes back. It's like, okay, all right. Anyway, so I got on a little bit of a tangent there, but Dub Cornett calls me up and says, I got this session. Can you do it? The money's not that good, but it's this friend of mine. You're going to record a Townes Van Zandt song, and Joan L. Moss is going to be there, and I think I knew that much. Or maybe I didn't even know the Joan L. part. Just that he said, we're going to do a Townes song. It's this woman I know she wrote a book, and she wanted to have like this soundtrack that went along with the book. And there was the song, If I Needed You, she wanted on there, and she couldn't get permission. So that was the one she wanted, and they couldn't get permission. So Dub was just setting up the session. They're going to record the song. I'm like, okay. I said, but I have my first rehearsal with John Prine that afternoon. He goes, it's not going to take long. It won't take long. And the session was at Javelina, which is RCA, was what they called RCA Studio A at the time, which Dave Cobb has now. But at this point, it was not really being used. It was kind of in disrepair, but anyway, so I said, okay, all right, I can do it. I go to the session. I'm the first one there, and we get bass sounds, and it's kind of funky, but they have like a lot of the old stuff from the old days of RCA Studio A. I mean, it's still all there. It didn't look like anybody had cleaned it up in a while, and I don't think it was being used on a regular basis. But the engineer was a guy I knew, and Dub was there, and I'm the first one there, and I get sounds on the upright, and then Steve Earle walks in, and I'd never met Steve, and I'm not sure, but I think this was shortly after he had gotten out of prison. He did a little time. And so Steve walks in, and I'm thinking, oh, wow. I didn't know anything about the session other than I'm playing on a Townes Van Zandt song. And Steve walks in, and then I hear him talking, and I realize, well, Steve's just there to play guitar. And I thought, wow, that's, kind of weird. And I do remember that at one point they said they had like a couple boxes of Townes Van Zandt's catalog, like almost all his CDs. And he said, as part of your pay, you guys can take any of these you want. And so I just remember, like, it's in the corner of the control room, and me and Steve are both like on our hands and knees going through and pulling out all the CDs. It was, but that was a funny moment. And anyway, and then after a while, Townes shows up, and I thought, oh my God, it never crossed my mind that Townes Van Zandt would be there. Just never in a million years. Dub hadn't mentioned it. It's like we're doing a Townes Van Zandt song with Townes Van Zandt. Anyway, it was, yeah, that was one of those moments where I just thought, okay, this is really cool. And we did the song a couple of times. Jonelle Mosser sang the girl's part, and we did it like 2 times, and Townes was like, I'm done. Well, I guess he wasn't doing that well because he did not live much longer. It was because that's what Dub had said when he said, when I said I had to go to a rehearsal, and he said, this is not going to take long. And I think because he knew that Townes was not going to, like, he was going to sing the song once or twice, and that would be it. You know, he seemed okay, but I'd never met him. I'd seen him at the Exit Inn I'd play a show, which, you know, I don't have that much to compare that to, because I'd never really, it's the only time I'd seen him. I might have seen him get up and do a song, but that's the only like show, like full Townes Van Zandt show I saw. You know, that night had its moments, like where there was, like, it was really great, but there were times when I thought, I don't know, I don't know if he's how together, you know, he is, but I had nothing to compare it to. So, I mean, that day at the studio, same thing. I didn't really have any reference to know whether he was doing well, or, yeah, I was just happy to be there. You know, it was like one of those. I was really happy to be there. You know, there's all these moments I can look at my life, because I was just a music fan that got lucky. You know, like that's what me and my buddies did in high school. We just listened to records and listened to a lot of records and went to as many shows as we could go to. And then I landed on an instrument that I could play. Yeah, it was kind of a perfect day. Yeah. And then I think that was, and I only know this because it's mentioned in the Guy Clark book that Tamara Saviano wrote. I remember running into someone at the airport, and they said, hey, you're in that book about Guy Clark. And I thought, how am I in a book about Guy Clark? I never worked with him, but they talk about that session. I guess Guy showed up later. I don't think I was there when Guy showed up. And then hung out for a little while, and Townes told some stories and just kind of hung out. And then I had to leave to go to John Prine rehearsal. And I remember walking out and with my upright and putting it in my little pickup truck, and it was a beautiful day in April, and I getting in my truck and starting to drive off over to the Prine rehearsal and thinking, what is wrong with my life? Nothing. There's nothing wrong with it. Like at that moment, it was just one of those, one of those days I'll never forget. Got to record with Townes Van Zandt, and then go to my first John Prine rehearsal. It's like, okay, this is why I moved to Nashville.